Yeah. There we go. I tried to go silent, but it didn't work. I'd like to go ahead and welcome everyone to the Sutter LAFCO meeting of Thursday, July 9th, 2026. Let's see. First order is to get us some roll call, please.
Chair Boomgarden,
Here.
Commissioner Baines, Commissioner Chapdelaine,
Here.
Commissioner Elphick, Commissioner Ripley, Commissioner Stevens,
Here.
and Commissioner Ziegenmeyer.
All right, if you please stand and join me in the pledge. Salute and pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Item number 2 is our minutes. Bring it to the commissioners for action.
Make a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll second.
A motion by Commissioner Stevens, a second by Commissioner Chapdelaine. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? We have one. All right. Item number 2 passes our minutes. Number 3, public comment. Members of the public are invited to address this commission on any matter of interest to the public that is not on the agenda for a period of time that doesn't exceed 5 minutes. Pursuant to the Brown Act, the commission cannot take any action on items not listed on the posted agenda, but may add to a future agenda matters brought up under public comments for appropriate action at the future meeting. At this point, is there anybody that would like to talk to us about an item that is not on the agenda? Seeing none, and where's that? Oh. See, I have to take my long-range glasses off. Sorry about that. Please state your name for us.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Appreciate it. My name is Dane Wadley. I'm with the California Special Districts Association. Just wanted to make a few comments, if I could, with the 5 minutes. My role with CSDA is as essentially the field representative for the special districts, independent special districts here in Sutter County and other counties, actually locally, but obviously for our purposes, Sutter County. Obviously the community service district with Commissioner Ripley being one of the most obvious examples. And so we at CSDA, we just like to do a lot of outreach to the LAFCOs as well. Obviously, you know, we have districts that are a part of the commission. There's a lot of work, of course, that you do related to the commission. And just, you know, kind of have you guys be able to put a face with a name, and certainly worked with the executive officer on a number of occasions just to make sure we're staying in touch. And obviously we can, you know, help you guys as the case may be in terms of outreach to the districts or interactions, obviously with the MSRs and other work that you guys are doing. We just, like I said, want to make it a priority to be a resource, be of assistance to the commissioners and obviously to the staff. A couple things I'll just touch on real briefly, maybe just to help pass along. Of course, we're doing this on our own side as well. In addition, so CSDA is a couple of things you're probably similar, you know, you're used to, or you're familiar, of course, with CSAC if you're in the county or League of Cities. So we're obviously basically the equivalent of that for special districts. So we do a lot of legislative advocacy work for special districts in Sacramento. A number of bills actually we're partnering on with cities and counties this year as a local government coalition, which has been real nice. So we do that. And then there's a lot of professional development, training resources for special districts, staff, and board members, of course. We just finished our general manager leadership summits. We have a board secretary clerk conference, and we have a board member conference as well. Those events are all coming up here shortly. But maybe one of the most pressing things I wanted to highlight is, so hopefully you're familiar with, but if you're not, I'll help. SB 827, there's financial fiscal training that board members have to go through, right? State law that was passed last year. CSDA provides that training on a webinar right now for all, well, really anybody, anyone who's affected by it to take. So I just, again, for the special districts especially, but obviously for anybody else, we provide that training. And so just want to make sure everyone's in compliance with that, to do that 2-hour training as well. So we do that. Any of our training events that I just mentioned, we have scholarships for districts to attend our training events. So we try to make it, cost effective and easy to get engaged and to get that information. So last thing I'll mention, CSDA has a bunch of basically member benefits for special districts who are part of the association, discounts on services, et cetera. I'll stay around a little bit to afterwards. Happy to chat if there's any questions about that. But overall, like I said, just wanted you guys to know we're out there and working with your local districts, and appreciate everything that the relationship that we've had and continuing it going forward. So thank you for the opportunity.
Before you leave, any questions? No questions? Well, we appreciate you coming by and providing us with not only a bit of an update, but the resources that are available to us. And you're welcome here anytime. Thanks. All right. As my computer screen just went completely dark, let me see if I can get to the next item. Anybody else for public comment, by the way? Thank you. All right, seeing none. Item number 4 is LAFCO 25-003, consideration and possible approval of a municipal service review and sphere of influence update for the city of Live Oak. Commission will consider making determinations as required by Government Code Section 56425 and 56430. At the conclusion of the presentation, we'll be conducting a public hearing. So,
Mr. Chairman, good afternoon. So MSRs are a statutory requirement, required to be done every 5 years. As you know, when I came back to Sutter LAFCO a few years ago, we've identified that a number of the MSRs are quite old and we needed to update them. We went through a competitive RFP process, established a consulting firm to help Sutter LAFCO out, RSG. And so you remember the fire MSR effort that we were going through a year ago. Your commission approved in September of last year. We then, the next priority was our city of Live Oak, and that was prioritized in your budget. And so we went through that process over this last year. It's culminated in a draft report that is before us this afternoon. I just wanted to publicly thank the City of Live Oak staff, Ben and Jaspreet, for putting all the time they did, because I know working for a small agency, they have a lot of priorities, and I just really appreciate them taking the time to help make the document all it could be and help getting us the information. So Jim Simon is with RSG, and he's going to be doing the presentation.
Good afternoon, members of the commission. Jim Simon with RSG. We'll kind of get into it. The Krzyzewski-Hertzberg Act discourages urban sprawl and promotes early development, and does so by, and one of those ways in which it does that is the requirement for LAFCOs to prepare periodically and review prepare municipal service reviews and review spheres of influence. So this is, as Doug mentioned, for the city of Live Oak, which is the one of 2 incorporated cities within the county. It's located along Highway 99 corridor in the northern portion of the county. Last MSR update on the city was done in February 2012 by the commission, and we'll cover some of the basic information about the process and some of the findings in the MSR in this presentation. Before I'll do that, I'll just also mention this process culminated about a year ago, as was mentioned by the executive officer, and we're here today about 13 months later. And I want to echo the comments that Doug made of city staff, because during this course of time there was some turnover at the city, including the city manager. So that definitely can slow things down. And I have other jurisdictions where we do these things where we're at almost 2 years in some cases to get them done, because of some of those turnover issues, and the responsiveness and assistance from staff was helpful. They've been active in reviewing the document, obviously compiling information. We've done interviews with staff, collected a lot of data from primarily their ACFR's annual consolidated financial report, as well as other information that we could pull online from their website and other sources that obviously is all contained in the nearly 100-page MSR that you have in front of you today. So this is a little bit of information about the town. It's about 3.1 square miles, the city limits. It's about 9,700 residents. provides several core municipal services and relies on other agencies and other contracts for other partnerships. For example, the fire services that are provided through the county, which I think which you're well aware of, as you all did the fire MSR last year. And this slide really summarizes generally how those services, what services are provided by the city and whether or not they're provided in-house. The city contracts with the county sheriff's department, and they're in the process, and city could certainly speak to the status of their contract amendment for that agreement, as well as Sutter County through CSAF for fire and EMS, fire services anyway. So let's get to the kind of the key determinations that are required by the government code where the Cortez-Uxbridge Act is contained. There are these 5 that you see here: present and planned land uses, a present and probable need for facilities and services, capacity for growth, existence of communities of social economic interest that maybe lie within the boundaries of the city limits or sphere of influence, and the present and probable needs for facilities and services by any disadvantaged unincorporated communities that happen to lie within the existing disadvantaged unincorporated communities. For the MSR determinations, you'll see some similar context there. This is just kind of restating what's in the law there as well. So let's talk about some of the services. The service review is constructed where there's a series of background information about the city, and then we profile the various functions and services that the city provides, including documenting how they're currently providing those services, the level of services they're providing, the metrics in terms of levels of calls for service, for example, on law enforcement. And other metrics that we could compile from, again, reported records on that information. And then we just develop a narrative around that. In addition, this service review also includes a financial recap of the history of the agency, as well as a 5-year forecast for the city's general fund, water fund, and sewer fund. Those funds, particularly the water and sewer funds, are in some degree of strain if you've read the MSR. This is not news. The city's been well aware of that. So we'll be talking a little bit about that today too. But for the most part, the city hasn't seen a significant amount of growth in recent years. And so that's an important context, I think, to some of the things that the city's facing today, including some of the recommendations with the sphere of influence. So let's just talk a little about law enforcement first. It contracts with the sheriff's department. Under that model, the sheriff provides patrol, traffic enforcement, investigations, and other specialized services as needed. The city maintains a local police substation within the city limits, but relies on the county for broader staffing and operational infrastructure support, things of that sort. During the review period, 911 calls, cases investigated, arrests all increased, while the response times improved across emergency, priority, and routine call categories. Based upon these trends, the MSR finds that law enforcement service levels appear to be adequate for the current demand. Now, obviously, we're aware there's a contract amendment happening, but we haven't yet seen what the implications of that's going to be. One of the recommendations, obviously, and just kind of to tee it up throughout this conversation, is that the city will be due for another service review in about 5 years, and it'd be incumbent upon LAFCO to probably revisit that at that point in time in a timely fashion. This one is obviously a little bit longer than 5 years, since this was February 2012. And so, as I mentioned, so the question is capacity. So obviously, the sheriff's agreement is scheduled to terminate in November. I'll let the city respond to where the contract amendment is currently at. And that's been largely due to fiscal challenges that the city's been facing. And it was one of several, but two key ways that the city has been trying to manage costs to bring down the structural deficit that the city has been facing. The city has negotiated renewed contract terms with the county. And a last conversation we had with the city manager, which was maybe, 3-4 weeks ago, was that those contracts are going to get brought forward to council in the near future. All right. And then we have fire services, as I mentioned, that's provided through County Service Area F, which is Sutter County Fire. And Sutter County Fire provides fire protection, first responder EMS through obviously the Joint Powers arrangement through in the region, hazardous material response, staffing operations, and I mentioned ambulance transport, excuse me, I should have said is through the bi-county ambulance JPA. The city owns fire-related capital assets, including rolling stock equipment, as well as the fire station itself, and the county provides the staffing and operational support. Services appear to be adequate based upon the city's a Class 4 ISO rating, call and response time data, as well as average response times. And that was also shared in the fire services review that was performed last year for the entire county. Similar to law enforcement, of course, there's still a long-term question on capacity for the city to be able to maintain the contract. As I mentioned, the contract is scheduled to be terminated in November. I know the city's been working through that and the status of that amendment to bring those costs in line with what the city is able to afford. And we expect to see that happen here in the near future. For capital facilities, capacity of facilities and adequate services under road maintenance, the city roads and streets are maintained, I should say, by the city's Public Works Department, using a combination of contract services for several of these activities, such as street sweeping, asphalt patching, and the like. The city has about 34.9 miles of public maintained roadways, including local streets, collectors, and arterials. The city has a PCI, pavement conditions index, of approximately 55, placing the overall roadway conditions in the poor range. I will pause because just, to provide context to that, for those folks that aren't familiar with PCI indexes, there's most cities in California are at that lower level of service, somewhere between the 50s and to maybe, in the best case I've seen in some cases is in the, 70s. So don't want to read into that too much. But that is, and that's candidly a function of just road funding that generally local governments struggle with. While the city's existing staffing, fleet, and facilities appear to be sufficient to maintain the current road conditions, the city does not maintain a formal pavement management plan or a long-range roadway CIP, which could help at least plan for and fund those projects when the needs arise, and setting aside funds on an ongoing basis when those funds become available. Combining these two factors, obviously, there is an increased risk in the meantime of deferred maintenance and potentially more capital costs by lack of maintenance. Now we'll talk about a couple of the utilities. First is the water utility at the city. So the city provides potable water service through its Public Works Department. The system is groundwater based virtually entirely, and includes wells, storage, and distribution infrastructure. The system itself serves about 2,500 accounts, most of which are residential, in reflection of the city's land use character itself. Based on the 2025 water rate study that was completed after quite some time of delay, and city input, the existing water supply and physical system capacity appear to be adequate for the current demand. However, the MSR identifies several long-term constraints, including water quality concerns such as PFAS and nitrates, rising operating costs, and the need for continued capital investment. City staff indicated that a key near-term decision for the city is whether to retain both the water and sewer utilities or to explore disinvestment to sell those utilities to another provider, perhaps a private provider, for example. The City Council has directed staff to issue an RFP in May 2025, but has not yet been done to date. In addition, the water's service quality appears adequate, but long-term reliability will depend on the city's ability to continue to invest in the water system, even with the water rate increases that were put into place a year ago. Long term, there's still a need to continue to increase water rates, not just during the current 5-year cycle that they're in with their rate structure, but also to repay interagency funds or loans that they've done some borrowing on to cover deficits in prior years, some of which are continuing, and obviously long-term sustainability of the system. And then finally, with sewer, the city owns, operates the municipal water system, includes its own wastewater collection, conveyance, and treatment facilities. The sewer system appears generally adequate for the existing demand, but the primary system planning document is the 2009 wastewater collection system master plan. Because that plan is over 15, 16 years old, sewer capital planning is largely reactive and focused on immediate operational needs rather than long-term system optimization. While there hasn't been a lot of growth in the city to maybe warrant, a extensive expansion of that infrastructure and facilities, when you take the sort of planning and long-term planning in context with the financial situation that the sewer fund is facing at the city, this is another area of concern because there is a structural deficit that the sewer fund is facing at the moment, so that obviously curtails the ability of the city to set aside funding for capital investments in the system. As I mentioned, the city is planning to explore the potential to divest from the system and sell it off to a private operator, but that has not yet occurred. Under Parks and Recreation, city operates a pretty robust Parks and Recreation program, containing about 26 acres of parkland within the city limits. And it amounts to about 2.7 acres of parks per 1,000 residents. This includes a variety of facilities, including a pool, I think, as many of you are aware. The city does not maintain a formal capital improvement program to plan for the long-term capital needs of their parks. So those needs and costs of that have not been fully determined. Overall, parks and recreation services, however, are functional to meet the current demand because the city has not, again, seen a lot of growth in recent years. But long-term adequacy would be enhanced by, again, developing a capital program and master plan to make sure that can be maintained. Now, under the city's financial ability to provide services, as is contained in the MSR, we did a look back to 2019-20, which was a pre-COVID year intentionally. So we have a 6-year history of actual costs over that time frame between the general fund, which is where cities pay for their general services, a water fund, which handles the water utility, and then the sewer fund. And then this slide basically summarizes kind of the findings across that. And we looked at, and then we did a 5-year projection as well. As I mentioned, really all these funds have different levels of constraint. Probably the most severe are the general fund and the sewer fund for different reasons. Even the water fund, though, it will still have shortfalls, which were anticipated in the water rate study that was done 2 years ago, just because they were so far behind in terms of where water rates needed to be to cover the cost of operation. They still need to draw down some internal funds to cover those operating costs for the first couple of years of that rate. As I mentioned, the city's been doing things on its operating budget to maintain and rein in costs, primarily through the 2 most expensive areas of public on the public safety side. So that's one area where that is occurring. And then the sewer fund, as I mentioned, there hasn't been a rate study for some time. So the city will need to evaluate, if they're going to keep those utilities, what their long-term plans are for both of those enterprises. The MSR, as required, looks at opportunities for shared services. So currently, there are shared service agreements with Sutter County and the Sutter County Animal Services Authority. And they've engaged in informal conversations in the past with Yuba City around around alternative service models for public safety, but those are primarily now focused in obviously the ongoing and soon to be completed negotiations of those contracts with Sutter County. Cities, again, we mentioned looking at alternative service models for water and service utility, as I've mentioned in those slides, and I won't kind of get too much more into repeating the same information we had in the prior slides. Forward here. Under the accountability for community service needs, what we looked at here was whether the governance structure allows residents to communicate service needs and hold the city accountable. And we look at a number of things to do that, including, the type, what's available to the public through the website, which is the primary means of communication, obviously, to the public. What kind of information is provide to the public, how the public is engaged in those activities, look at the meetings and minutes and the frequency of those types of things. And overall, we developed some conclusions around that. So, the city is governed by an elected city council, city manager that sees the day-to-day operations. They make their public meetings, budget documents, planning materials available consistent with state transparency requirements. I'll note that one thing that is a little bit unusual to the city's credit is that I think the city has something like 15 years of ACFRs available on their website. That's the annual consolidated financial report. Sorry for getting wonky. But, and I'll be honest, like a lot of cities much bigger don't have that kind of inventory historical collection of that information, or simply it's just hard to find. So, that's a real key source of information that's available and was leveraged a lot through the work that was in this MSR. However, public participation does appear to be relatively limited. Now it's a relatively small community, we acknowledge, but when you look at, recent city council meeting minutes over the last several years, there's been some really big topics of conversation around, water rates and whether or not we're going to maintain public safety contracts and things like that. And in those discussions, it is a little bit remarkable, at least, to acknowledge that there hasn't been a lot of public discussion. There's been limited. The minutes show, a few public speakers attending the meetings. And don't consist even capture the substance of some of those comments. They just tend to be really pretty high level. So it's a little bit hard to even gauge what the level of public engagement is, and that might be one area for the city to, evaluate and how they can do a better job in doing that, particularly as they're advocating for, contracts and things like this that may change how services are provided in the city. It's important that the public be brought in to that conversation, which is difficult to do, certainly, but something we'd recommend. All right. So now we'll get to the SOI recommendations. So for quite some time, the city's sphere of influence has gone all the way out to the northern limit of the county, where it abuts Butte County, and all the way over to the river. And that is outside the city's urban growth boundary, and although it does happen to align with the general plan planning area. And but the general plan planning area is smaller within that. And so what we're recommending is to reduce the sphere of influence from where it's at presently by bringing the northern boundary down south to, I'm sorry, I lost it in my notes here. I'm going to see it on the screen. To Riviera Road, that would bring the northern SOI south, and then bring the eastern SOI over from the river some distance to Meter and Senard Avenue. These changes would result in the boundaries being coterminous with the city's current general plan planning area. So basically where the city is anticipating growth to occur, which is essentially one of the principal purposes of an SOI to begin with. So we think that is a useful recommendation. It would still be considered, this is where the terminology gets a little tricky here, because we're actually reducing the sphere of influence, but it's still technically called under LAFCO policy an expanded sphere of influence. Expanded because it's beyond the current city limits, but it's not expanding, if you will. So hopefully people understand that. And that really sums up the recommendations on the sphere of influence and the city service review, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
All right, thanks for the presentation. Bring it to the board first before we open up the public hearing for any questions or comments.
Through the chair.
Yes.
Question, by reducing the sphere of influence, is there much savings by doing that?
Well, the city's not providing any services outside its even the city limits for the most part right now. So there really would be no savings that would be realized. But that's a good question to ask, though.
Thank you.
Yeah, through the chair. No real questions, but just appreciate all the info, all your work on this, as well as all the time the staff spent on it. I think you mentioned our city manager. He may have some other comments or other things. When he speaks, I may have some other comments, but that's it for me. Thank you.
No question.
Okay.
So, Mr. Chairman, if I could.
Yeah, of course.
So keep in mind, a municipal service review, as noted, it's done every 5 years. It's a snapshot in time. You know, if you look just locally here, we have, Live Oak is experiencing fiscal challenges. City of Yuba City has had to address fiscal challenges. Sutter County is. If you zoom out to the region, remember this fiscal year, I think it was City of Sacramento was facing a $65 million deficit. You have the Sac County was facing a $100 million deficit. So all the cities and counties in the region are under various levels of fiscal distress. I think at the end of the day, we all agree that revenues aren't keeping up with expenditures. And I think we see that on our own home budgets, right? And so, City of Live Oak is no different. But just keep in mind, any MSR, it's just a snapshot in time of where an agency is. And an MSR can make recommendations for what may need to go forward. But it's just a tool. So just keep that in mind. And it also can be leveraged as a way for agencies, hopefully, to work better together. So that was it. Thank you.
I appreciate those comments. Okay, at this time, I'm going to go ahead and open up the public hearing for this item. Anybody that would like to make a comment, please go to the podium, state your name, and you have 5 minutes.
Good afternoon.
Or more.
Just a quick few comments. So Ben Moody, City Manager, City of Live Oak. So thank you, Doug, and your team. The document, from our stance, it's very thorough, and it's an accurate, for better or worse, point in time for the City of Live Oak. And so with that, we support the recommendations. I think it's good planning. It aligns with the city's general plan document. It aligns with, instead of being more of a geographic boundary that was just arbitrarily across the middle of an orchard or with the river, it aligns with the roadways, and it's really set up for where the city's going to be in the foreseeable future. And it doesn't, there's nothing with reduction and aligning it with the general plan that, should the future, 50 years from now, Live Oak be expanding in a different direction, they could come back and talk to LAFCO. So with that, happy to answer any questions, and the City of Live Oak supports the recommendations.
Thank you, Mr. Moody. Any questions for Mr. Moody or comment?
Yeah, just one quick one, because it was brought up about the RFP last May. However, we did run that, right, Ben?
My understanding is that there was an RFP early summer of last year before I took the role, and there was no responses. Again, I am working to reissue an RFP is to see where we're at now.
Okay.
Anybody else for Mr. Moody?
Through the chair. Yeah. Just a quick question for my information. On the roads, where does the funding come from that? Is that through the state allocations?
It's similar to the cities across the state, but it's a mixed bag of gas tax and vehicle registration fees. And so the primary is a transportation development tax that's off the gas tax. There's a SB1 that's also part of the gas tax. It's really limited based on the gas tax. And then leveraging grants that come in. And so it just hasn't kept up across the state as to what the funding need is versus the cost to do that. And so we are looking to leverage Live Oak historically hasn't been utilizing their transportation development account funds as TDA fund source. So we have about $3 million in reserves that we're going to be leveraging now to try to put some projects up to maintain our system, and then also reaching out and coordinating with SACOG to try to bring some funding in.
Thank you.
Any other, well, let me follow up. I know Commissioner Chapdelaine and I sit both on SACOG, and, the comment that was made in the presentation about the status of the roads being less than desirable in the region is exactly spot on. I don't know that there's anybody in the 6-county region that we sit with that is thinking that they're getting enough money from the state, who Mr. Moody mentioned. There's a misnomer out there, or a mistaken out there, that we get all this money from the state and we spend it somewhere. We spend, and I'm sure Live Oak's the same way, we spend the money that we get, and I'm sure the county's the same way. We spend the money that we get the best we can, but it's not enough, and it's getting worse. The funding that's coming from the feds and the state, at least to the SACOG level, which is the pass-through agency that goes to the cities and to the counties, is diminished as well. So it is a tough issue. Anybody that's in that business that's trying to maintain roadways has a task in front of them that I think is very difficult. But we're doing what we can do, and I know all the entities in the region, because we talk a lot, are trying to do the best we can. Yeah. Anybody else have a question for Mr. Moody? Thank you, Mr. Moody. Anybody else from the public wish to speak during this public hearing? Seeing or hearing none, I'm assuming we don't have to do this SB 707 check online stuff that we have to do for good. All right, I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing. Any comments from the commissioners? Well, I'll make one. Number one, thank you for the presentation. Number two, thanks Live Oak. I know the situation of trying to get an MSR and get regular business done is probably a big challenge. So having the information available for us to consider as the LAFCO board is very much appreciated. The getting these done to Doug and staff, we were a bit behind on getting MSRs done, so it's nice to keep moving along, getting these things done. And I'm assuming, hearing no questions or ever, we'll go ahead and bring it back to the commissioners for action.
I'll move to adopt a resolution determining the Live Oak or City of Live Oak Municipal Service Review and Sphere of Influence update is categorically exempt, and just move the motion forward.
I second it.
I have a motion by Commissioner Chapdelaine, a second by Commissioner Elphick. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, item number 4 passes unanimously. Thank you again for being here and presenting and working with Sutter County LAFCO. All right, number 5, appoint a commissioner to serve as the voting delegate for the CalLAFCO Annual Conference, which is going to be held October 21 through the 23rd, 2026 at the Sheraton Grand Sacramento Hotel in Sacramento, California. Mr. Libby, I guess.
We don't always have a local CalLAFCO conference, so it's an opportunity for commissioners to be able to spend a day and go down to see the conference. Definitely would encourage commissioners, if you have the time available. Annually, CalLAFCO conducts an annual business meeting, adopts or has votes for its membership for the upcoming year. And so I encourage commissioners or a commissioner to consider going down and being a voting delegate. I know we don't have all of our regular members there, so I don't know if there's a commissioner today who wishes to take that role, or we could, in fact, defer it to the September meeting.
My comment is I did have a chance to go down last year, and it had been a while since I'd been to one of those conferences. It was actually quite interesting, as some business down there and the presentations. But since I went last year, I'd be happy to entertain someone else that wants to go. And since it's a day trip, that's not a bad gig.
I'd make a motion to send our chairman down once again.
That's mean.
I'll be happy.
I'll go with you.
Okay. Yeah, it doesn't mean, we can have more than one go. I just think we're appointing a voting delegate, so
Correct.
we'll bring it back in September and maybe find out if anyone else wants to go down.
Yeah, or just individually, if you have an interest, you can just email me. We can get you on a list and we can get you signed up for the conference.
Okay. Item number 6, which is the executive officer's report.
I have nothing additional for you, Chairman. Thank you.
Item 7, any commissioner reports or announcements. Mr. Chapdelaine? Commissioner Stevens, you're welcome. Commissioner Ripley? Commissioner Affleck? Okay, I have none as well, so I will call this meeting adjourned.